Ready?
Yeah. We are ready, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Human Services Committee for Monday, November 4th, and we have a quorum. And may we have approval of the minutes of the September 16th meeting as amended?
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Could we have a motion for the approval of the minutes of October 7th, 2013?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Are there additions or? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have citizens' comments. There are people signed up. Let's see, we'll take them by the items on the agenda. I see that one, yeah. Is this support? What is that? Oh, mental health board, I got it. All right, so green. Do you know what these two are? Okay. The first item is for discussion is HH1, which is school safety resolution, and the person signed up for that is Betty Sue Esther. Miss Esther? All of these are Harvey Clark, you know, except.
Right. Okay, thank you. My name is Betty Elster. I stay at 2031 Church Street. I'm here tonight to thank you for letting the state law prevail in our neighborhood. That is the neighborhood around the Evanston Township High School, District 202. The people on the south side of Lake, the west side of Pittner, the north side of Church, and the east side of Dodge. Is grateful that the state law will prevail. However, even if this ordinance had been withdrawn, thrown away, the damage to our community has already been done. Our neighborhood has been painted as a neighborhood of high crime occurrence in it. In the 20-some years that I have lived there, there has never been this much attention given to our neighborhood or that much crime going on around the high school. If you had read the emails, the many emails that I had sent you, you would have seen that the high school have more incidents on their grounds, and they continue to have problems at the high school. We wish that we could help, but we cannot step into high school. We can only take care of our neighborhood. Our neighborhood has been painted as something that is now a crime-infested neighborhood, which is not. The people that have lived there has lived over there 40-some plus years. So that means you got lots of seniors there. And we are not worried about crime. We're not worried about the other things. The ordinance that is going forth contains many, many items of things that is already in place. The only thing that I saw that was new, really is not new. It says it's going to add more lights on Church Street. That's not new. We have been asking for more lights on Church Street since I've been here. The people said before, if I've been here 25 years, the people that's been here before me have been asking longer. So this ordinance does not give us anything new. It just makes the things stay the same. So I do not understand why come it was not drawn, and to help change the neighborhood and change the image that has been painted of our area. We did not deserve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Esther. Are there any other, I don't think there are any other speakers on that subject. I see Ms. Giles. I don't see her. But it doesn't say that she wanted to speak on that item. Oh, also Ms. Decree. Okay. Comments from the council members on the HH1.
Madam Chair, are we discussing that now?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, great, thank you. Our discussion about an intergovernmental agreement to implement the state statute, the Safe School Zone statute, began probably, I think, a year ago, and it began in the spirit and the tradition of collaboration and cooperation between our schools and our city. And it was thought at that time that the implementation of this state statute, which is a criminal trespass statute, required also an intergovernmental agreement between, in this case, just the District 202 school district and the city of Evanston. What's changed since then is two things. One is kind of the realization that the state statute that we've been talking about took effect on January 1st, 2012 by its own terms and is in effect in the safe school zone that the statute itself defines by operation of law. Not just at the high school, of course, but it applies to every school in Evanston, public, private, elementary, and secondary. And another thing that has changed since then is that the state statute has been implemented in the location, the venue where this all began, namely in Champaign. And I have had, in the last couple of weeks, conversations with staff from the state senator's office where the state statute originated, as well as the chief of police, a good guy, Chief Cobb from Champaign, Illinois, and realized that Champaign has been implementing the Safe School Zone statute in Champaign without the benefit or the need of an intergovernmental agreement. And they've done it in a way that has been entirely compatible with both the city and the school's goals for ensuring the safety of residents, staff, and students in and around the school campus. So what I'm proposing is that we continue to have and work on all those issues that the school and the city have been working on for all these years, many issues, many related to school safety, and that we, for the time being, keep it committee and hold it committee, any kind of formal implementation from the city, but rather that we let our police and our school do what they do best, which is to work hand in glove outside of and on the ETHS campus every day during the school year and do what they do best. And if we find that our implementation of the state designated safe school zone isn't working for us, that we explore either through the state senator amendment of the Safe School Zone statute so that it works for Evanston as well as for Champaign, or that we find a different way of retooling it, either the statute or its implementation for Evanston and for our schools. It's been a really long process, and I regret, as Ms. Esther does, all that of the negative stuff that has happened that's come about in this discussion of a safe school zone, because we are involved in the schools, everyone involved in our schools and in the city with school safety personnel and with the Evanston Police Department are such good people, and I think we are on the same page with this. I hope that the community does not expect or think that the state statute for a safe school zone somehow created an impervious force field around our schools that prevents anything from happening. The safe school zone statute is simply a criminal trespass statute, and it's one of many different types of state statutes that have been enacted to create a safe school zone around the school for the purpose of traffic and concealed carry law. We've made exceptions to the concealed carry law for our schools. We enforce traffic, and we have stiffer penalties for use of a cell phone within a school zone. And there are so many ways in which the state has required us to make our school zones safer and protect those who operate within them. And I think this criminal trespass statute is just another tool that both the city and the school can use. So my suggestion is, again, that we keep this at committee. The resolution that was in the packet tonight was really just my preliminary draft for a resolution, and my apologies to staff for any confusion about where we were. As you can see, it was very much in draft form, and it was mostly my preliminary thinking as I organized my thoughts about this meeting and this discussion. So I hope you'll be with me and with the school. I've had conversations with representatives from the school district 202 today, and I think maybe we can agree that simply implementing the state law as it has been passed and as the Champaign School District and the Champaign Police Department are implementing it should work for us as well.
Thank you, Alderman Grover. I just would like to say thank you to you personally for putting this into a forum where maybe all of us could look at and see that what we've been saying all along is true. I mean, these are the kinds of things that are happening in our community already, and that we're all working for the same purpose. So it may be in draft form, but I think you did a great job of bringing it to our attention, and hopefully we can move forward. Any other comments? Okay, so do we need a motion to do that, or?
I think we can just keep it in committee.
Just keep it in committee?
Leave it as a committee item and revisit as necessary. And I hope it's not necessary.
Okay. All right, moving on. The next item is HH2, the review of the police complaints. Are there any comments, questions? I see the chief is here. Anyone have any questions, comments? No? Okay. We can just move to accept that report.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, HH3 is the update on the Harley Clark Mansion, and I believe we're going to have a report from our city manager, but we have a number of speakers, and I'd like to take those first. So we'll call them up. Pardon me?
How many speakers do you have?
We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 of them. We will start, we'll ask you please to try to keep it within the 3 minutes time because we do have other items on the agenda. We have Harold Bauer, I believe it is, Nora, I'm going to kill your last name, Nora, I'm sorry, Dietrich, Jerome Hausman, and Diane, is that Thomas? Totus, okay. And Janad Risky, and Sarah Kaiser. Those are the 6 people.
Madam Chairman, can I defer speaking until the presentation of our executive director and comments of the committee? I mean, I'd like to hear how the discussion evolves, and at which time perhaps it won't be necessary to speak.
Okay, that's fine. That's
I'm Harold Bowers.
Harold Bowers, okay.
Sorry.
All right. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Nora Dietrich. I'm the director of the Evanston Arts Center, and I live at 829 Forest Avenue in Evanston. The last meeting, October 7th, the Arts Center was asked to come back to you this evening with an update on the progress we've made over the last 30 days. And you have paperwork and a list of items in your packet. A few highlights on that list is that the Chicago Kiln Service did come in and they put an additional shutoff box on the south wall of the kiln room. This is an item that Captain Novak asked us to do. We have investigated 2 ductwork cleaning organizations, and the general ductwork cleaners will be in. They inspected the ductwork of the kiln, and they'll be back in next week to actually clean it. And one change on the list that was sent to you, we did actually sign a contract with IFF Real Estate Services today, and that contract has been sent to them for co-signature. So that should be done probably this week as well. If you have any additional questions on this list, I'm happy to try to answer them. Tess Lickerman, our board president, is here to also pitch in if there's a question that I can't grasp. And also we have Barack Eccles here with us, who over about a year and a half, we've been very fortunate enough to have pro bono counsel from Kirkland and Ellis, and Mr. Eccles is here in case Tess and I have are given a question that we cannot answer. So in addition to our list of items that we have already completed over the last 30 days, we are asking this committee to consider having us come back at your December meeting for another update. The holidays are upon us, Thanksgiving and the Christmas holiday. So we really lose about 2 weeks' time, work time, in that period. And we are hoping that you will allow us to come. And I don't know if you have a January meeting in 2014. The calendar was not up yet, but if we could come back to you at that point for a final update, we would appreciate that.
Okay. We do have a January meeting.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And are there questions? Alderman Breathwaite.
Just a quick question regarding the contract. I see on page 55 kind of the scope of work. Are you paying for that?
Yes, we are paying
And how much?
for this.
So I can see.
A little over $6,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next speaker, please. Jerome Hausman.
I'm Jerry Hausman. I live at 1501 Hinman, have lived there for about 25 years. I had a longer talk. I'm going to cut it down for you. We have a problem. The Harley Clark Mansion, now occupied by the Evanston Arts Center, is in need of repair. There's enough blame to go around. The city of Evanston owns the building. It has stood by while things have continued to fall apart. The Arts Center, appreciative of the $1 a year tenancy, has functioned in the space and made do as best they could. They have not complained. At the last meeting of this committee, there was eloquent testimony as to the value of the Arts Center. The Arts Alliance of Illinois referenced services to the state. Representatives from Districts 65 and 202 described the center's service to our schools. Citizens have attended the Arts Center's school, and they've told of their very warm personal experiences. And artists have found the center to be a vital resource, offering eloquent testimony. All of this says nothing about the ongoing program of exhibitions, lectures, and panels dealing with the visual arts. Truly, this is our city's arts center. It is our arts center and has been for as long as I have been in this community. It's become clear that we do not wish the Harley Clark building to be turned into commercial interests. It's clear that the property should continue to function as part of communal interest serving our citizens. I can speak at length as to the value of the arts for Evanston. Just as we maintain a police and firefighting force, just as we provide for lighting and maintenance of our streets, we have a responsibility for the aesthetic well-being of our community. It's no accident that we have publicly supported arts institutions in virtually all of the cities and communities in the nation. The Evanston Arts Center serves as one of our key organizations for serving the whole community. They want to do more. They can do more. Read the literature of the Business Committee for the Arts. More important, read, if you can, John Dewey's Art as Experience. The current situation can become the focus for a renewed and enlarged effort, what I would call the renaissance of the Arts Center. The Center's board has clearly stated its desire to stay and work cooperatively with the city. Together, we should resist state or corporate interests that would love to use our lakefront properties as office space. What is now needed is a clear and unambiguous commitment for the continued occupancy of the Evanston Arts Center within the Harley Clark Mansion. There's work to be done and funds to be raised. Brick by brick, room by room, let's focus on what we can do and start this important work by affirming the present location of the Arts Center. Removing this ambiguity would constitute
going to have to ask you to
clear,
wrap it up.
I am
Okay,
close.
okay.
Thank you. Would be a clear statement as to our values and intentions. It would be an affirmation of the importance we place on the visual arts and our community of artists. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Diane?
My name is Diane Thodos. I live at 2668 Orrington. I've lived there for 23 years continuously, but I also grew up in Evanston during the whole of the 70s. And I'm here because I have been other places for my art education as a visual artist, but I've come back to Evanston for reasons that deal with the Evanston Arts Center very specifically. Even many people reminisce nostalgically about the importance of their childhood drawing with crayons on paper and such. But the far-reaching aspects of culture in our community was actually acknowledged by people who I went to school with in New York City and other professionals. When I said I was from Chicago, they say, where? I said, Evanston. They said, well, you better say Evanston because that's a considerably important town for culture. Even I didn't know the umbrella under which I had grown up was so rich and so deep. I studied to become a visual artist. My sister went to the Evanston School of Ballet, became a dancer. Now she has Thodos Dance Chicago, is her own company on a par with Hubbard Street and working with the Joffrey Ballet in Chicago. I have a sister who's an actress who was in Piven and is a wonderful artist in her own right. all these deep artistic roots really came from here. And my own drive took me to New York. I worked for galleries, but I returned to Evanston, and this is where I developed. And the Art Center, even on my return, was a very important element in my own development. I'm saying this not just for me, but because I think we live in a time when commercial values have trumped communal values. And when I saw this happening, especially in New York City in the 80s after Black Friday, I began to worry quite a bit that we were going to be losing our identity, that the kind of deep nurturing of these kind of human values was really very rare. They were disappearing in New York City themselves. And we have to consider communal values over commercial values to keep who we are from becoming just the regular vanilla-flavored towns that spot all over. Not to say that every town is vanilla-flavored, but it was very extraordinary to find out how extraordinary it was to grow up here. Communal over commercial. And the shock of the attempt to sell the property and rezone it has awakened in me something of a phoenix. As gallery artist who's shown in New York City, in Paris, in Mexico City, and in Chicago at the Tom Masters Gallery, as an artist who is resurrecting a webzine that hopes to regenerate the New Art Examiner and has some broad intellectual support from people nationally who are well-known intellects in the art field. I have hopes. I have a lot of high hopes for change to be happening, but I think we have to have some of these changes happening really soon. And I think the Evanston Art Center is one of those things we cannot sacrifice because it's too deeply embedded in identity that perhaps, like others in this room, we don't realize how deep they stretch into the roots of our very being until they're gone.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
So, in wrapping it up, this is what I say. Please support the communal over the commercial. The values of creativity cannot have a price tag and a market value. They're the kinds that are intangible. And that kind of social basis of understanding is what I hope we all understand we need right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Riskin.
Janad Risky. I've been at this for quite a while because when this all started, as you know, I investigated this whole thing. And I kept on filing FOIAs and everything. And the Art Center at the time wanted to move. But that being said, in my investigation, I looked at this and saw that there's 2 park districts there. And the site is not integrated, it's not managed. While the Art Center might be a good use, what this coastal agency is proposing is not just moving its offices there, it possibly could integrate the site into something for public use. The real question, of course, is we need to see the money, and what will the money be? Will the coastal agency give us a fair market rent for the place, or will it give us the capital to fix the building? We can't rent it for $1, and we shouldn't. The rent probably for that building in a commercial rent would probably be between $200,000 and $300,000 if the city's going to take over the capital cost to fix it. If the city's going to fix it, it's going to need $3 to $4 million, I believe, to fix it. So if the Art Center really can't come up with this, and this other agency can, and this other agency's interests are to make it into something for the public benefit, then I think, unfortunately, the Art Center may have to look at other options. And I also think the council should pursue both if they want to pursue both at this time. But warn the Art Center, we're going down a path where in a year or two, they may have to leave the building. So that may be something people need to understand here, if this other agency can provide the funding to fix it. Because I think everybody in this room should be here tomorrow night when we talk about city debt. The city is basically in trouble financially and can't maintain its buildings as it is and wastes a lot of money on a lot of things. But I'll be here to talk about that tomorrow night. So thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Kaiser.
My name is Sarah Kaiser, and I live at 1889 Maple, and I've lived in Evanston for about 4 years now, and I'm a teaching artist at the Art Center. I've taught at many different schools, but the Evanston Art Center is a special place because I've made connections with other teachers, other students. I've acquired new patrons, but mostly I've made new friends who have been able to mentor me and help me to develop my own artwork. I know that in these hard times we're focused on the bottom line. However, I hope we can focus on the community and think about the arts aspect of the community. And ironically, the arts can boost the economy if businesses team up with the arts. I've seen local banks and local businesses work hand in hand with the board of the Art Center, and some of them have become my patrons and have bought some of my paintings. So I know that if we focus more on this connection instead of marketing to a private entity, that's basically what the people of the city want. I remember when the mansion was offered to the Pritzker organization, they wanted to turn it into a bed and breakfast. And as you know, it wasn't the right direction because of the beach access and the public land. So anyway, the Art Center is on a public space, and I think it should be used for the public benefit. And when we're looking at the history of the Art Center, there's a long history, and if we don't want to be an Anytown USA that is just like all of the other cities, and we want to keep our name of Evanston being a culturally diverse opportunity, it's important to find some sort of compromise, which is necessary to keep the Art Center in the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That's the last speaker except for Mr. Bauer. City Manager?
Madam Chairman, I will not be speaking. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. We're here this evening with a update on the Harley Clark Mansion. You see in the staff report you have before you, page 50 of your packet, that we have had additional discussions with the Arts Center, which their representatives have referred to this evening, and there's also a report from them, a letter dated November 1st. The new news for you is a communication I received from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. I was approached about 2 months ago by the executive director of the Illinois chapter of the Sierra Club about the future use of the Harley Clark Mansion. He had read recent press accounts of the city's efforts and told me of interest by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources to consolidate its coastal management program offices from various locations to a facility on Lake Michigan in the Chicago area. This facility would ideally have their offices as well as public space for conservation and education programs about Lake Michigan. So this was a call that it was not solicited, no previous contact with the Sierra Club, but they reached out and connected me with the chief of staff for the agency, Todd Main, and their director of their coastal management program. We spoke by phone several times, and they then came out to visit the facility a short time later. From that discussion, they were very anxious and excited. They then forwarded to me the letter that's in your packet, dated the 18th of October. I then followed up with them again to help remind them of where we were with the process with the community to make sure they were indeed interested in moving forward, and they indicated that they were. And I shared with them that I would bring the letter to you this evening for your consideration. So the question before the committee, Madam Chair, members of the committee, is what should be the appropriate next steps? Given the work that has been done with the Harley Clark Mansion, I think that if the committee is interested in considering this request from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, that it would be appropriate for the committee to re-refer this issue back to the full City Council with perhaps a recommendation of how to move forward. I think because of the time, energy, and effort we've spent up until this point, I would hesitate to have next steps without the full consent of the City Council. So this evening I'm asking for your direction as appropriate next steps, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I'm looking for lights. Alderman Grover was first? Okay, I see all three of them. Okay, Grover, Burris, and Tindem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bobkowitz. Thank you to Ms. Dietrich for the report tonight, for continuing the Art Center's due diligence as to the feasibility of continued presence at the Harley Clark Mansion. I think it would be unwise for us not to ask the city manager to bring it back to the full city council, the IDNR, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources proposal, and not to undertake formal discussions or pursue this option and see if this particular proposed use of the mansion is compatible, or at least more compatible, with the community's hopes and desires for the building and the space. So I will formally move to refer this to City Council for further discussion.
Okay, it's been moved in second, but still comments. Alderman Burris, do you want? Okay.
I agree completely with Alderman Grover's comments. I think this is a good idea to start talking with an agency that is willing to put in money to redo the site, would be taking over the maintenance of it, and we wouldn't be putting in our tax dollars for this. I also remain extremely concerned about what's happening in the building now, even more so after the Capitol tour. Was it a week and a half ago? The basement area was frightening, really, really scary. That we even allow children in that building is alarming to me. And I would like for our city attorney, even though the Art Center has a lease on the building, I would like to find out what our liability issues are. Walking through that basement, the nooks and crannies, I asked when we were there, is this only one exit? And the response was yes. Then you walk back through many other parts of it, very tight areas, back to areas where we have the kilns being fired. If something happened in that room, the firefighters to get down there to help somebody get out, I'm not sure how they would even get down there and get through there with their equipment. That's just one piece of how scary and unsafe the building is. Then on top of that, you have the electrical strips plugged into each other, plugged into a wall, that are doing a lot of work on that, with the pottery wheels. That's unsafe for a regular home to have strip upon strip plugged in together. But for a public building where you have teachers and kids in that building, there has got to be something done. And the parents that are sending their kids to these classes should be warned about the safety hazards in that building. It is extremely, extremely frightening to me. And again, the city, there has got to be, if something happens there may be massive liability for us, because we clearly know that it is a real problem, and we've done nothing to ensure that the Evanston Art Center takes care of this. We've not condemned the building. We've not stopped people from going in there.
Alderman Tindem.
Thank you. City Manager Bobkowitz, has the fire department maintained an oversight of this building and declared it safe for its current use?
Yeah.
And there's health department, no one else has cited anything in particular. Well, there's a list of improvements that need to be made very quickly, but as far as using this building, we are confident that it's workable. My opinion of the building wasn't that drastic. I went to art school. I've seen rundown, crummy studios, and I've worked in them, spent time in them. They're messy, they're creative, I don't know that the electrical situation you described is creative. Those are the kind of things we need to fix, but they sound like they can be fixed rather easily. I don't want the opinion out there that this is somehow a dangerous place. I think that's doing an injustice to the Arts Center.
And Alderman Tendam, I would agree that we do not believe it is a dangerous place. However, it's important to note that there are issues that need to be addressed.
Certainly.
And as we brought to you a few meetings ago, the list of improvements that the city staff believes need to be made, that list remains, and we believe that it does need to be done. I think really the bottom line is that enough time, in our opinion, has passed that we need to do something.
Certainly.
So
no, I totally agree. But what that is needs to be determined. And along with, I think the one man that got up and spoke about ambiguity, and that's something we do very well here at City Hall. We did send the Art Center in a direction, gave them a co-worker in terms of the Evanston, the city committee, the art committee that is sponsored by the city. So all of a sudden something else comes along. It's like, it's like you got a hot date, but something else hotter comes along. And do you renege on the date, or do you just, do you maintain your the honorable thing to do and date a couple of people at the same time. God knows I've done that.
And since I serve as the chaperone for many of these activities, that's why I'm here asking the question.
Okay. My request is to give the Art Center the amount of time that we have agreed to give them to show what they can do. I think the arts are vitally important to this community. I realize the other thing is kind of sexy because it's new. And another question is, has the IDNR identified any other locations that you know of?
My understanding in talking with them is that they have been looking for an extended period of time for a location and has not been able to find one. They have offices in downtown Chicago and other places around Illinois. So this has been a long-standing desire of theirs to find a location where they could have a program that is committed to the conservation of Lake Michigan, near Lake Michigan.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I've taken lots of classes at the Art Center, not for about 15 years, but have always enjoyed my time over there. I've loved the people that I've met, have adored my teachers, and just have felt privileged to be able to be in the building. Now, not having been over there for a long time, I also took the tour that we were on, and I was amazed at how solid that building is. I mean, down in the basement. And I sold real estate for 20 years and have been on hundreds of contractors' inspections, both in large commercial buildings and in small houses. And that building is built like a tank. And I'm sure that we could overcome the ingress and egress issues, as well as the maintenance, the utility issues. That takes money. And I just don't know how much money the Art Center has to put into it. I know the city doesn't have money to put into it, and so that will be a big part of the negotiations. The last time we met, I did ask the city manager how we make this equitable between the Art Center and the Noise Cultural Arts Center, where we ask the tenant artists actually to pay rent. And I want to make sure that's in my ward, and I want to make sure that that's an equitable situation. I am fascinated with the idea of the Department of Natural Resources. I don't know where they came from out of the blue, but it's an interesting concept, and I agree that we probably better serve our constituents by addressing this as the full council so that we all have equal input into this. But I do admire everyone who's over there. I admire your spirit. I admire the work that you produce, and it's going to be an interesting process moving forward, but we have to consider what our fiduciary responsibility is to the taxpayers of Evanston as well.
Okay, Alderman Brathwaite.
Just really quick, and I think a lot of the comments have already been said. Alderman Tendam, you said it very colorfully, but I would agree with we are in a very ambiguous situation, and part of my concern that the city manager will have to manage is, on one hand, there's the need for repairs of the building, and on the other hand, we have someone who's interested in looking. So I think as long as we continue to be transparent and upfront with the Arts Center that we are looking at other options for the building, then I at least feel good supporting it to move along to council. I guess the one question I'll have for the city manager is, clearly we learned our lessons from the first round of this with the Colonel. How will you go about keeping the community informed as you look at these options?
I think the major way we've done it, other than all of our usual ways, is we have created a listserv. So we send emails to interested parties when issues will be coming up for discussion regarding Harley Clark. So, for example, there was a note sent, it was Friday or early Saturday, about this meeting with a link to the agenda so residents could read about that, and we've committed to keep current on that, and we will do that. So I think that's working. I've heard from a number of folks who are connected to this issue and appreciation of having that available. So I think that plus the Evanston media are probably the ways we'll keep folks abreast.
Well, I think that we have demonstrated, at least I hope we have demonstrated to everyone, that we care about the arts. And I've not had the privilege of visiting a lot of art schools and places, but I don't think that we want anyone to be in any place that's unsafe. And I'm very, very concerned about that. Whether it's dangerous or not, I can't say. But if it's unsafe, then I know that those issues need to be taken care of right away. So I said that from the very beginning. The other piece, Alderman Fisk, I think you said it very well. We all are sitting up here and we know that we don't have the dollars. We, the city, don't have the dollars to put into the renovation and the ongoing maintenance of the building. So that certainly will be a big factor in any kind of decisions, I think, that we each have to make according to our own conscience. But I mean, it's just not there. And I didn't go into the basement because my knees had given out by that time when we did the tour. But I did look at the grounds, and it is a big, old, steady-looking building, but it is so in lack of maintenance. And I think I said to someone, the gutters, I looked outside, which beautiful, beautiful gutters, but it must be 20 years since they've been cleaned. I mean, there's trees growing out of some of them. It's just amazing. So, I mean, I'm concerned about, how we're going to take care of it, what's going to happen with that. So I think that the decision is correct. We just need to move this on to council and vote on it and stop playing around with it and make a decision. I mean, there's nothing else for us to do. Alderman Grover and then Burris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I want us to be mindful throughout this discussion, though, that the Arts Center is an ongoing operation, that it's got staff and students, and could we please be careful about not undermining the operations, the ongoing programming, and the future of the Evanston Arts Center because of this discussion. Whether the Arts Center stays housed at Harley Clark Mansion or finds a happier home, 5 years from now, I want there to be an Evanston Arts Center 5 years from now, and I do not want the Arts Center, I think it already has taken a hit because of the repercussions from this discussion for student enrollment, and so we cannot, as part of this discussion, undermine the Arts Center and be supportive of its mission and its work and its role in the community. And in the meantime, Mr. Bobkowitz, the timing of our discussions with the IDNR, are they compatible with allowing the Arts Center to continue its due diligence through and until our January meeting? You don't anticipate things to be resolved with the IDNR before then? They're not in a big hurry, so that we can allow the Arts Center to take the time that it's asked for.
And I would say they're very sensitive to the current issues that you've all discussed, and they have represented to me that in no way do they wish to come onto the scene in an unwelcome fashion. So I've explained to them the situation and the dynamics to the best of my abilities. I think if the question that I would ask the committee to forward to the council is simply, should we also be talking with the Department of Natural Resources in addition to the ongoing discussions with the Art Center? So
And
assuming that's...
I think we should. I think it would be irresponsible not to.
And so if that question comes back in the affirmative from the full council, then it probably would not be until after the first of the year. I think the next step that IDNR has indicated is they would like to have a community meeting to explain who they are, what they do, what their thoughts are for the building, and get community comments. So that, in their mind, is their next step. I think, practically speaking, that's probably not until January.
Right.
So I think that it would be very appropriate to then hear from the Art Center in January, perhaps hear back from IDNR in February, and then perhaps this goes back to the full council again at that point.
I think we have a motion. Has it been seconded?
No, I have one more light. Alderman Burris.
I forgot to mention a few other issues with the house that were alarming. The lead-based paint is a serious problem, and if you read anything about lead-based paint, what happens to kids, it's very, very serious, and there's been lead-based paint found in both the house as well as the fog houses. The peeling paint, I believe Alderman Holmes, when we were in the fog houses, huge swaths of paint coming down from both, very, again, alarming. The other, in the basement, when you first come down the steps to the right, there's a utility room, 2 large sinks. The water wasn't drained. I mean, both sinks half filled with water. Someone could easily drown in that water. There's electrical in there with the 2 water sinks not draining. Again, if we were to go into a school and do an inspection, what would we do if it wasn't the building, wasn't the city-owned building? Would we allow a business to open under these conditions? Would we allow a school to open under these conditions? And I think the answer is no. And that's the part, again, that is concerning, is we are clearly turning a blind eye to safety. Just saying, well, it's safe enough. I don't think it would be safe enough for my kid. I wouldn't send my kid there. And maybe other people feel perfectly fine with sending their kids there. But I don't want my kid exposed to lead-based paint. And I don't want my kid in a situation that's could easily electrical fire. And I know, Dolores, you couldn't make it down to the basement. Really some scary stuff down there. So the Art Center, also, where are they going to get the money to maintain the building? They haven't. They've been at $1 a year for a very long time, and we have severe maintenance issues, severe safety issues. So that's a concern. And has the Evanston Art Center offered to purchase the building? And if not, why not? If they want to stay, why don't they take it all over versus us doing this back and forth with them? If they want full responsibility, why aren't we giving them full responsibility as they want? So those are my comments.
And Alderman Holmes, members of the committee, if I can answer a couple of those questions.
Go ahead.
I think the last question first. My understanding in discussions with representatives from the Art Center is that they are evaluating the building to determine what makes sense for them, and a purchase of the building, a longer-term lease of the building. They understand that the ground is not available. Grounds are not available. So that is something they're evaluating as part of their studies. Regarding, again, the condition of the building, we have gone through with our city inspectors, with our fire department, with our building and safety folks, and they have made recommendations to make the building safer. They do not feel at this point the building is not safe for habitation. The issues that you raised regarding lead-based paint in the fog houses, for those who aren't familiar with the complex there, the fog houses are 2 buildings adjacent to the main mansion. The Evanston Art Center does not have any control or programs in those buildings. They are used by the city of Evanston. We will happily go back and look at the paint issue there. I'm unaware of any lead-based paint issues in those buildings. I believe that there certainly is lead-based paint in the Harley Clark Mansion, but of course the presence of the paint itself is not the danger. It is is when there is dust or flaking of that paint or there is danger. And I'm unaware, as I stand here before you this evening, of any instances of that in the main building. Again, hadn't missed the part of the tour that had the fog houses, so I did not see that. And it's been probably 6-9 months since I've been inside them. We'll have staff look. Mr. McCrae, the interim director, is here. It's his staff's responsibility for the maintenance of those buildings, so we'll check on that. So I think just to reiterate, these are difficult issues. My compliments to the council for being willing to deal with them. These are issues that did not happen overnight, but we need to address them now. Your city staff believes that the building is safe for occupancy. If it was not safe for occupancy, we would be here telling you that, and although it would be a very difficult message to convey, we would convey it. But there are ways to make the building safer. We will continue to work with the Art Center to keep the building as safe as it can be, all the while urging that we move forward as quickly as possible with some direction and determinations of future use of the building.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we move this item on to the full city council. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The next item.
Madam Chair, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but because of the extremely damaging comments from Alderman Burris that hurt our business, incendiary comments, I ask that this committee and you, Chairman Holmes, please allow Mr. Eccles to get up for at least 2 minutes to respond to that. It's absolutely unfounded and unbelievable that those comments came out. Some of them don't even make sense. 2 minutes, please.
For who? Now, who is this?
Mr. Eccles, who is our pro bono counsel from Kirkland and Ellis, who has made it all the way up here from Flossmoor this evening to sit at this meeting.
Okay, we'll give him no more than 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Barrick Eccles. I'm an attorney with Kirkland and Ellis Law Firm, and I'm proud to be here representing the Evanston Arts Center to work with you and with the City Council to come up with the result that's best for the community and best for all of us. I would echo the comment that the Honorable Alderman Grover made, that it's very important at this point in time not to undercut the mission of the Arts Center. Regardless where the Arts Center ends up, we need to make sure that people know they can send their children there, they can send their students there. It's a wonderful, viable place that is full of culture and is a boon to this community. And so I do want to echo, the city manager said it best. The building is safe. It is old, yes. Old buildings sometimes don't look that great. But it is safe, and it's been inspected by the city inspectors. It's had the electrical examined. We've had Captain Novak from the fire department in, and we've taken his recommendations. So I don't want there to be any suggestion whatsoever in the press or elsewhere that the building is not safe for operation and that it cannot continue in its mission to serve the arts and to serve the community. I also want to say that the Arts Center has made very clear to me and has asked me to make very clear to you all that it is very willing to work with this committee, to work with the City Council to try to reach a resolution that is satisfactory to all. An open and honest and transparent discussion is all that is being asked for. We recognize there are challenges and we're taking steps to address them, but we would like to address them cooperatively and together. And we hope that that's what we'll be able to continue to do as this moves forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, I just also want to say again, though, let's not overlook the fact, and we certainly want to be as cooperative as we all can be, but let's not overlook the fact that there are some issues that will have to be addressed, and we just don't want to forget that. And so I think that is a reminder that we want all the supporters to take that into consideration as well, that the items that I think they were shared in it wasn't the September meeting. I believe it might have been the August meeting. items that the city had found through the inspectors that needed to be corrected. So I think those are the items that were being referred to. That's all. Okay, moving on to our next item is the township. Assessor Bonnie Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee.
Excuse me, Assessor Wilson. I'm sorry, Alderman Burris. I didn't see your light. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I have no issue with the mission of the Arts Center nor the arts. I have a problem with the liability issues for the city of Evanston, and I said very clearly I personally would not send my child there. What other people do is their business. It is my opinion, and I have a fiduciary responsibility to look at the safety of the residents as well as the financial of the city being sued. That is my job, to make those questions. And if someone's against me doing my job to protect the city and protect the residents and protect other people, that's not, I'm going to continue to ask the hard questions because most people won't.
Okay.
Assessor Wilson. Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Bonnie Wilson, Evanston Township Assessor. I'm here tonight to give you the monthly update on the Evanston Township Assessor's Office. In October, my office returned corrections of property tax bills for missed exemptions totaling $4,851. This brings the total dollar amount returned to Evanston taxpayers since April 1st, 2013 to $172,329. Corrections can still be made as far back as 2009 taxes that were paid in 2010. If you think you have missed an exemption or have never applied for an exemption, please contact my office to see what exemptions you are eligible for and have not received, especially your senior or homeowners exemptions. Anyone receiving property tax exemptions on more than one property has until December 31st, 2013 to contact the Cook County Assessor's Office to repay the exemptions received erroneously. However, after January 1st, 2014, a new state law takes effect, allowing the Cook County Assessor the ability to recoup taxes, penalties, and interest on incorrectly received property tax exemptions by placing liens on the said properties. If you correct these exemptions before December 31st, there will be no penalties. This is a new law, and everyone should be aware of it. Please call the Evanston Township Assessor's Office, and we will be able to help you with these exemptions. For those taxpayers that appealed their assessments through the Board of Review in August, the Board of Review has completed their hearings. If you have filed an appeal, you should be getting a letter from the Board of Review sometime soon or in the next few weeks. If you have not, by the middle of this month, received a letter from the Board of Review, please contact our office. The Evanston Township Assessor's Office, again, is now located at 2100 Ridge at the Evanston Civic Center, room 1450. Our new phone number is 847-448-8168. That's 847-448-8168. We are open Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 5. I would also like to ask the Board of Trustees that at your next ward meetings, if you can please make an announcement that the township has moved to the Civic Center with our new phone numbers. I would be happy to give you flyers and business cards to have at the next ward meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next item is, unless anyone has any questions for Assessor Wilson? No one? I see no lights. Okay, the township monthly bills. I have. Okay, it's been moved in second. I have a couple of questions. Supervisor. I remember very distinctly asking the former supervisor about a contract.
Okay.
With Ms. Vance, in fact. At that time, I believe he was telling us about having her work with him, and that was a bill for $550. Now I see another bill
For $2,000.
for $2,000, and I am just concerned, how did this come about? Because I don't see the backup of a contract. I see a billing from her, but I don't see what I had requested from, and it may not exist, I understand that, from Mr. Gaspar in terms of of some kind of written contract with Ms. Vance.
Alderman Holmes, members of the committee, I do not believe a written contract exists, but I believe an oral one does. I reviewed the information that was submitted by Ms. Vance. She did quite a bit of work with the budget and did submit that to Mr. Gaspard a day or two prior to his resignation. So I believe that the town supervisor at the time did enter into an agreement with Ms. Vance, and my recommendation at this point would be to pay that bill. I've asked Ms. Weidman to let Ms. Vance know that her services are no longer needed, and so there will be no additional billing from Ms. Vance.
Okay. Okay. I just find it a little disheartening. And I see also the Sun-Times bill, and I believe that we were told that there was some kind of negotiations going on with that. In fact, that's why we held it. Did we have any backup information as to what happened with that?
Best I can tell, and we continue to, it is a personnel matter within the township at this point, so I hesitate to get into too much detail about that, but I believe the order was placed lawfully, and it is a debt owed by the township of Evanston.
Okay. All right. Alderman Brathwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was actually going to ask a similar question on the $17,000 bill, so I guess we'll have to wait to hear about that. My second question is regarding the budget. And so we have a $2,000 bill coming from a consultant. I know that prior to Matt Spinkowski leaving, he completed a budget with staff. So I'm curious to know, where's the budget?
I reviewed the budget. I believe it takes too much money from fund balance, and so I'm trying to balance that budget, and it is not yet done.
Do you anticipate when will we have it?
Madam Chair, if you're ready to move on to that item, that's the next item on the agenda regarding the budget.
Let's just complete, if you don't mind, let's just complete HHT 5. So it's been moved in second, I believe. All in favor? Any opposed?
I'm sorry, are we moving to pay the 17, or are we waiting?
We're paying them all. I mean, we owe them, so my question didn't have anything to do with we're going to pay them. I know we have to pay them.
Okay.
But I was trying to get the backup information if we had it. So, okay. So are there any opposed? Not, okay. Moving on then to HHT 6, which is the proposed FY14 Town of Evanston budget update.
And Madam Chair, members of the committee, as I was mentioning to Alderman Braithwaite in response to his question, there has been a lot of work done on this budget. I am not satisfied that it cannot be balanced within the levy. The levy that has been the same levy, I guess this will be the third year, rather than taking fund balance. The township has spent quite a bit of fund balance over the last 24 months, and I'd like to present to you a budget that is balanced based on the levy only. A lot of this also goes with the transitions and the changes that have been made, especially in the township supervisor's office, so we are able to peel away some of the consultant contracts that have been had by the township. There's also then the question of the community services line. So we have, as I think you're all aware, the general assistance, the emergency assistance, the housing assistance, but there has been a community services line that has included things like the summer youth employment program, like the mental health board, and a variety of other miscellaneous miscellaneous things that, as I sit where I sit now, I'm not sure are appropriate expenditures of the township, and if that is something we can either reduce or eliminate in order to balance the budget and focus on those things, as I mentioned at the Rules Committee earlier this evening. I think that the support for the Mental Health Board is important. Their request that they made to this committee, the amount of money that's in the budget are two different numbers.
Yeah.
And so that has to be rectified. So there is a number that's proposed coming from the township for 2014 that's consistent with the number from last year. There's still a deficit number. So when the budget comes back to the full city council for discussion, I'm going to be recommending a different number for the mental health board, reduced from what the mental health board has requested, and so the council will ultimately have to make the determination what is appropriate there. So there's a couple of options, I think, for the committee. We have noticed the budget under Illinois Township law appropriately. The city clerk distributed a note today that he felt that it had not been done, but in further discussion with him, indeed the document had been provided to the city clerk a couple of weeks ago, so we have fulfilled the code requirement, so that there is a budget ordinance in the clerk's office, which is the requirement of the state law. So we can either have a special human services meeting sometime during the latter part of November, or hold the township budget till the December meeting of the Human Services meeting, and then take it to a town board meeting. I think it's December 11th, the only meeting the city council will be having in December. We would still be 2 weeks before the beginning of the fiscal year and 9 months ahead of where we were in 2013. So perhaps there's not the urgency to have a special meeting, but instead to have the committee consider the budget at your December meeting and then forward it on to the town board for adoption a week later.
Would you, Supervisor, would you be sharing with us, I don't know if this committee or the council, I'm not sure where we're going to get this budget, some of those other miscellaneous agencies that were funded, or programs that were funded under the township that you no longer consider necessary? My reason for asking the question is that some of those programs were designed to serve township folk in a whole different way. So I would hope that you would share that list with us so that
Certainly.
we could discuss it.
Sure. And I can share the list of what was funded last year. There's something, there's a line item $870 for veteran flags, which I'm still trying to sort through what exactly.
And I could tell you about that. I happen to know about it because it's important. Those are the flags that go on the graves for the veterans for Memorial Day. And then nobody else does it, so the township did it, and they've been doing it for years. So that's important. I mean, those are the kinds of things I'm talking about.
And I think ultimately it will be the council serving as a township board to decide, and so we will list those out if there are those that are that would not be included. I can tell you right now, my recommendation would be not to include funding for the community, for the city picnic, or for the summer youth employment program, and just have that be within the general fund. That I don't think it makes sense to take it from one general fund pocket and put it in another general fund pocket. So there are probably
and there might be other ways to fund them. I understand that.
On that list, Val, if you take away the community picnic, the mental health board, and the summer youth employment, I think there's probably 3 or 4 other line items. So we're going through that. We're going through some of the other administrative operating expenses, but my goal is to present a budget that does not require any additional tax levy, nor take any additional funds from the township's fund balance.
Right.
So that's where we're at.
And I understand, and I appreciate being efficient like that, but I also think that's one of the issues that I have about dissolving the township, is because there are some services that I don't think people are even aware of that the township has taken care of and provided for the community, like the flags. I mean, it may seem like a small thing, but it's a big thing for the veterans, and it's a big thing to have those flags out there on the graves on Memorial Day. So, and I just think that we need to talk about it as a council, because maybe other council members didn't even know that. I don't know if they did or not. Alderman Brathwaite, and then Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess Superintendent, I don't know if I should, City Manager Bobkowitz. So in our Rules Committee, you identified approximately little over $200,000 in proposed savings. And so now And this is where I get a little bit irritated with our decision. I hear we're cutting services. And so my question that I will, and I don't know if you can answer it now, if you can project what your cost savings will be on top of the 200 and whether it was 25 or 55, I'll go back and look at that number. But what is your proposed savings that we will eventually see?
Well, the $225,000 is a number if the township is dissolved.
Right.
So the budget that I'm presenting to you is the budget for the township of Evanston not dissolved. So those costs, by and large, remain in the budget.
Okay.
Ms. Weidman and I have been going through, commodity contracts. We have a very expensive Pitney Bowes postage machine. We have a very expensive copy machine. We're trying to see, are there opportunities to end those leases in a way that makes financial sense for the town.
Allow me to redirect my question. I understand the services and contracts that are duplicated.
Sure.
That makes perfect sense. But I want to piggyback on what Alderman Holmes said is you are making decisions to eliminate certain services. And so my two-part question is, are you reaching out and having the conversations with the organizations that will be affected by your proposed budget cuts? One, and then two, will you have a detailed explanation to why you're making those recommendations? Two.
Alderman Braithwaite, members of the committee, I have no final budget recommendation for you. I'm trying to give you as much insight into the process as possible, to be as transparent as possible, and that's what I'm trying to do. I think the community services piece is something that, at least in my time in my city manager role, that there has not been a lot of discussion about. And so likely when I present the budget, it will not be focusing on how much we're spending on general assistance or emergency assistance or housing assistance, but it's these community services pieces which I think are more a matter for the council to decide if this is appropriate expense or not, because it is sort of a catch-all category. And one of the things, if the township is dissolved, that the city council then will have to decide is how do we fund these catch-all kind of things, because we've not, I believe, had that discussion. And I stand ready as your city manager, as your township supervisor, and whatever role I have working for you to implement that, but I also have a responsibility to shine light on what those expenses are. So that's my goal. We've not finished the review, but again, my sense of the additional reductions, other than the move to the Civic Center, if we can get rid of the postage meter machine, will be focused on this handful, 4, 5, 6 line items that fall under this one category.
Right, and your first item that you mentioned was the mental health board, which I would be the first to admit that's not my area of expertise. And so I'm curious to know, as you're making those cuts, again, have you spoken to anyone from the mental health
And
board?
I'm not
Have you met
proposing,
with?
and again, from the township perspective, I'm not proposing that there be any reduction in the township's contribution. The township began contributing to the mental health board allocation in years that the city did not, when the city's revenues went down. I don't know if it was before 2009, but certainly was in 2009. Maybe it began in 2008. So from a township's perspective, I'm recommending that we stay at the level that we have stayed. The mental health board, however, is recommending an increase above and beyond what they've received in previous years. So if the township piece remains the same and the council wishes to fund the additional amount, I would not recommend it come from the township. I would recommend that the council consider it as a general fund expenditure. And with my city manager hat, I will tell you that I believe it will be inappropriate to approve the entire amount that the mental health board is asking for an increase, because it is out of proportion with any other increase we're providing for any other service or program in the city of Evanston. And I will leave that to the city council to decide when we discuss the city's budget again on November the 18th. But as we move forward, I think it is very appropriate to come to grips with the mental health board allocation. It's been a little bit of smoke and mirrors over the last several years, and I think it's important for the council to understand how much you want to spend supporting these organizations, and then I think it makes sense to put it in the same property tax line item as we do general assistance. You know, taking aside these other programs, if flags are important for veterans' graves, then great. Flags are important for veterans' graves. Let's put that in the city's budget. the summer youth program is important. Let's make sure the funding's in the city's budget. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have these things that are funded through general tax dollars. We might as well just put them in the regular city budget. But again, we're talking about a relatively small number of initiatives. It's less than half a dozen. And we'll brightly highlight them when we come back with the township budget.
And just so residents don't forget, I know we have people who want to speak on the mental health board, so I haven't forgotten. It's just that it started to flow, so I haven't forgotten you. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Bobkowitz, for clarifying that at the very least, you'd be looking as Township Supervisor to fund the purchase services through the mental health board at the same level as last year, without a reduction from last year, because those allocations over the years have just been chipped away until we got to wonder about our commitment to those services. But at the very least, they'll be funded at the same level as last year, and the question is whether or not we can increase those allocations.
Through the city's general
Through
fund.
the city's general fund. All right. Thank you for that clarification. It's refreshing to be just discussing the township budget like this. It does feel as if there's been some light shining now, and it's very helpful. And maybe it's just because after 4 years of serving on the city council, I'm more used to talking about budgets in this way, and the township budget was confusing for me.
And it's unfortunate because it's not that complicated.
It's not. It's not a large budget.
And Ms. Weidman and her colleagues at the township have done an excellent job over the years. They just didn't pop up, and here they are. They have been working, Val, 25 years,
Doing the
Val
job.
has been working for the
Doing the
township,
job.
worrying about the township's finances. With all that said, we've talked and said, is the documents you receive every month at Human Services, the clearest way to express the financial position of the township? I don't think that it is, and that's no offense to Ms. Weidman. It's just there, as we move forward and have fresh looks at things, we can convey the same information, perhaps in a way that's more meaningful to you. And because of my other job, I understand how the council has looked at the city's finances. So if we can line it up in a way that is understandable for you, then I think the council wins, the community wins, and I think the good work of the township staff, which sometimes I think unfortunately has been maligned, shines through just through some of this clarity.
Right.
Okay, Alderman Brethwaite?
Thank you.
No, okay. All right, thank you, Supervisor. We now have community people who wanted to speak. Seth Green, Sandy Johnson, and Debbie Schultz. Okay.
Good evening, Alderman Holmes and committee. I'm Seth Green. I live at 1236 Wesley Avenue in Evanston, and I am here to piggyback on the comments that were just made about the importance of the mental health budget. I represent YOU, which is one of the agencies that receives vital support from the Mental Health Board. And I just want to say that it really is for us an absolutely core. It's 3 to 4% of our funding, but because it is general and because we can say that our city supports us, we're able to then draw in over $3 million in other resources from either donors in this community or from agencies outside this community. And so it's just a huge point of leverage for youth and families. And I also just want to say that I think Evanston is an incredible community, and we really value youth and families, and I think that is most apparent of all in the high-quality schools that we have. I'm also very aware, because of the work I do, that youth who are school age spend more than 80% of their waking hours outside of the classroom. And what we know is that in a community like ours, families come from very different means. And I think the commitment that we have as a community to excellence and equity for youth has to go beyond the school doors. And in my mind, that's really what the Mental Health Board is all about. It's wrapping around youth and families and seniors in those places where we don't have the big institutions. And grassroots organizations like ours can be there with the kids, in our case, out of school and in mental health therapy so that they're getting the high quality services they need. And I think all of you, know what you envision for your kids. That's something that came up earlier. And I just think that, this is really, in my mind, when a community says it takes a village, this is the investment in that village. We are hoping this year for a greater investment, explicitly because, as you mentioned, Alderman Grover, there has been chipping away, and this seems like an opportune year to begin the process of moving back up and making that recommitment to something we all believe in. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Johnson.
Can I ask one quick question?
Go ahead.
Mr. Green? Come back to the mic. I just have a quick question, and I never really understood this part of, so in terms of township service, there are a number of organizations that they fund. The dollars that you receive from the township, you just mentioned previously that you leverage them to get other city dollars. Do you take that dollar amount and target any specific population in town, or does it just fold into your general funds?
Well, every group is different. Many groups apply for a very specific program that they need funding. We have actually taken a different approach, and we've been very clear with the Mental Health Board. And what we've said is that we actually want to use their funds as explicit leverage for other federal grants. And when we do that, what we tell our federal grantors is that we have all of our facilities and administration covered. And then what we say to the Department of Education is every dollar you give us will go directly into direct services. So that's something that the Mental Health Board has asked us about each year. And as we've made the case that because we can put their funding towards things that are frankly less desirable for those federal funders, we can get more money. We've been able to convince them. But that's just our particular case. And then we have to provide outcomes on all of those dollars aligned with the direct services. But others I know are actually getting funding for very explicit interventions. I know people sometimes get a mental health counselor supported that's then serving 75 individuals. So it's all metrics based and very intentional. And it's an extremely, I think, sophisticated and thoughtful process. And I mean, I really think Evanston is unique not only for giving this money, but for the care and thought with which the people on that board give the money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I've got Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. My name is Sandy Johnson, and I'm a member of the Mental Health Board. And I'm here tonight. I'm glad the city manager went before me because he shed some light on the budget. I mean, we were very nervous when we saw the $506,000 because it certainly was, even when you deduct or add the township amount, it certainly was about $100,000 less than the Mental Health Board had approved as far as to the agencies that we were asking for the allocation. And my understanding is at your October 7th meeting in the minutes, it said that you did, would support our allocation of $828,979. So I hope that if there's going to be some sort of a cut in that you will talk with the Mental Health Board and have a good understanding of what the services are that will be lost as a result. Secondly, we're concerned about the fact that on page 95 of the budget, which lists the organizations that are going to be funded, there is an organization listed, Thresholds, who did not apply for funding this year. And secondly, there are two agencies, the James Moran Center and Northwest CASA, who did apply for funding, who are not on the list. So we'd like to know how we can make those changes. Thank you. And thank you for your support of the Mental Health Board.
You want to address that?
The information in the budget was incomplete information. The budget went to press before the Mental Health Board had made its final recommendations. We should have just left out any indications, and it's no more complicated than that.
Will you have a chance to meet with the Mental Health Board prior to making any cuts or recommendations to City Council?
I don't know when their next meeting is. When's your next meeting?
Our next meeting will be a week from Thursday.
I'll try to be there.
Thank you.
Okay, Debbie, you're next.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Shellroff. I'm here representing Shore Community Services.
And sure, 3 of our programs are located in Evanston, the Lois Lloyd Center on Church Street. We have a Scylla home on Brown and a group home on Michigan. And I just am wanting to speak in support of the Mental Health Board. We have been very fortunate to receive funding from the Mental Health Board for our programs for numerous years, and they provide services, they provide support to agencies that are providing services to our most vulnerable population. SHORE provides services to individuals with intellectual and other developmental disabilities, YOU for children, for youth in need, for the elderly, for housing. There's just so many services that are needed for Evanston residents. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, that's our last week. Yes, Miss Esther.
In the township supervisor presentation, he talks about the mental health program being split between 2 funds, the General Assistance Fund and the General Fund. The township doesn't have no general funds. They only have the General Assistance Fund and the Town Fund. Now, is this, because that was something that wasn't clear, it's all going to be in one. If you're talking about the General Fund, is he talking about the city funds where it was before, or is he talking about this budget for the township through the time that it might or may not be dissolved? So that needs to be clear so that we know exactly what is it saying, because it's not really clear. Because if you look at your tax bill, you will only see the general assistance and the town fund. Mm-hmm. No general funds under the township program. They only have 2, not 3. So when he's saying it's split between the general fund, then yes, the city has a general fund. So then the city, he's proposing that the city does not give the mental health program any money, that it be lumped over and it comes out of all of the township funds. That needs to be really clear.
Okay. I hear what she's saying as well. I believe I do, but I think, and I'm not going to try to speak for him, but I believe that we're talking about if the township is dissolved, and that would be the way he would propose. Am I correct?
Okay. That part I know because he had that in the presentation on the 21st. But I thought tonight we was talking about just the funds for the township. This township now through March, working towards March, because we're saying that's when the vote is going to happen. So you're making a budget through March for the township. So is that what is it one or the other? Are you talking about both?
Madam Chair, members of the committee. First of all, the township budget will be for the full fiscal year 2014. The Township of Evanston exists, will continue to exist. If the voters of Evanston Township decide otherwise, they'll decide otherwise, but you will have a 12-month budget. For next year, the Mental Health Board would be receiving funding from 2 sources. One would be from the township, one would be from the city's general fund. So the reference to the general fund refers to the 2 funding sources, and again, it's been that way now for the last 3 or 4 years. I'm proposing, if the township is dissolved, that rather than coming from 2 sources going forward, it would come from 1 source going forward, and that would be from a general assistance line levy on the tax bill. We would no longer have a township. We would have the ability to continue to levy separately under statute that is allowing the election. So we can put whatever we want to, in talking with the Corporation Council, whatever funds we want to, as long as the City Council approves it, we can do that. So that I'm proposing, so that we can end some of this confusion on the funding for the Mental Health Board, that would be a line item under general assistance, the entire amount moving forward. I think one of the challenges we have with the current allocation process is that the budget is not set ahead of time, and I think we need to try to figure out a way so the Mental Health Board has an approved dollar amount, a full dollar amount prior to their deliberations. We do them a tremendous disservice, and I think have done them a disservice over time by not having a dollar amount. The increase that they have requested far exceeds an increase in any other city good or service that we provide. And so my concern as your city manager is where is the parallel in everything else that we do, and that will be ultimately a question for the council to consider. So hopefully that solves or answers Ms. Esther's question. It has been a little complicated. Hopefully we can move forward after 2014 and make it less complicated.
Alderman Brathwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the questions that I did hear come out, or just something that resonated in the comments that she made, is just a clarity. And earlier at our Rules Committee, there were some that felt that by explaining to our residents exactly what was going on in some way, it translated into campaigning. And so I would only say to those that were at that meeting, if you hear and understand the questions that she's asking, that is our responsibility to translate that to our residents. And so I hope that it's at least clear to us tonight, and we keep that in mind when staff comes back with their proposals, that it's very important during this transition, as we talk about this 0.12% of our budget that's really targeted to help our most needy residents, that we're keeping those sensitivities in mind. And I think, to our city manager, you do a wonderful job balancing the budget and being efficient with how we allocate our resources. And I'm just hoping that there is a human heart in there that's paying very close attention to the services that are going to the residents, and that when we hear your explanation, it isn't based on a dollar amount, but it's understanding how those services impact the people that they were intended.
Sure. And Alderman Braithwaite, members of the committee, you entrusted me to be your city manager 4.5 years ago. I'm responsible for about 1,000 employees to make sure that they serve every resident of this community: police officers, firefighters, public works staff, planners, librarians, everyone. And I think there's a human heart in every one of those employees, and I would hope that you see there's a human heart in me too.
I see no more lights. So we should have a budget hopefully by December 4th, but if not, December 11th. All right. Do we have communications, Mr. McRae? Nothing?
No communications.
All right. Then is there a motion to adjourn? Okay. See you next month. Thank you. Thank you.